Folks, we'll get started in just a few minutes. Hello, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and get started now. Thanks for joining us on this month's Marketplace Update and Q&A with Prime Guidance. And this month we have our special guest, Emma from Marketing by Emma. Say hello, everybody, to Emma.
Hello.
Emma's an expert in listing optimizations and copywriting, keyword research, and so forth. So I think we're going to have some great insights from her as well. And before I forget, Emma, you also wanted to throw out a special offer. We can also mention this at the end, but I'll let you tell people now.
Absolutely. Yes, I would be happy to offer anybody listening a free Amazon listing or product page analysis. So we're going to be talking a lot today about how to prepare for Q4 and the holiday shopping season. So if you would like us to take a look at that and see where there may be some opportunities to strengthen up your creative, we would be absolutely happy to do that. You can go to marketingbyemma.com/free analysis.
Perfect. Sounds great. All right. So I'm joined here by several consultants on the Prime Guidance team. And if for those that are new to this webinar, it's just we're going to talk shop. We're going to talk about a bunch of different things. A little preview of some of the things we're going to talk about. We'll talk about Amazon Accelerate, some of the new things that have come up at that event. Some pretty exciting things, actually. I'm pretty impressed and anxious to talk about them. We'll talk about content optimizations, preparing for the big deal days in October, which is 8th and 9th, and brand positioning for fourth quarter, among other things. So it's pretty free form, but feel free to chime in with any questions. If you're joining us on Facebook, YouTube, any other places this is being live streamed, I'd encourage you to go to the link and join us on our Zoom session so you can engage and ask any questions that you have. Feel free to just raise your hand or just chime in with a chat with any questions as we go along. All right, so I did not go to Amazon Accelerate, but I've been following a lot of people in my social community, and I'm pretty impressed with some of the things that were announced there. So let's just kind of talk, some of the highlights. One of them is multi-channel fulfillment. It's a function that's been around for a long time. Amazon has offered this. A lot of sellers do not actively engage in using it because it's just not been very reliable. It's been functional, but they always kind of put the multi-channel shipments on the back burner, and you couldn't really count on fast delivery. Amazon's changing that. They're now announcing that without any increase in cost, sellers will get a 40% faster experience that will benefit customers regardless of where they order when using Amazon multi-channel fulfillment. So for example, what used to be the standard shipping window of 5 days has dropped to 3 days, and the expedited window dropped from 3 days to 2 days. And they're now allowing people to show real-time estimates on TikTok ads later this year, and also real-time estimates for e-commerce websites like Shopify, Google Ads, Google search results, and so forth. So it basically took something that was an existing platform and made it a whole lot more usable and dependable and reliable for sellers to trust. So I'm excited about that. I think it's going to open up more and more opportunities, and Amazon's really pushing their buy with Prime. The last couple of years, it's really gained momentum. It started off really slow, a lot of hesitation from sellers, and just why would I use buy with Prime? I'm not proven that there'll be enough of an increase. But Amazon's really been pushing hard, and they have 25% more brands that are now offering it, which has led to 45% more orders. So their stats show a 16% increase in revenue per customer when people leverage buy with Prime, and that's surely going to go up now that they're allowing better integration. So for example, in Shopify, there's now an integrated cart, so a unified cart. So for all of your items that are Prime and all of your items that are not Prime, now integrated in one cart, where before there was separation. And I think the most exciting thing I heard from the Accelerate show related to Buy with Prime is that they're going to give users that are both Buy with Prime and DSP users access to their product level shopping insights. So that's going to be able to help you pinpoint the right customers and actually direct them to your e-commerce website, something that you were restricted from being able to gain access to on the Amazon shopping behavior before. I think that's pretty exciting. And I know we already talked about TikTok, but the fact that they're strengthening their partnership with TikTok, especially as it relates to Buy with Prime, shows that they realize TikTok's gaining momentum more and more, and they don't want to be left in the dust. So if you can't beat them, partner with them. And I think that's the approach that Amazon has taken. I kind of captured a lot of things just so far, so I thought I'd pause there and just open up to you guys to see if you had any questions or maybe not questions, but things to add or discussion points.
Sure. The one thing I want to add that we have been discussing internally on with the Buy with Prime, that is sort of like, why would sellers want to do something like that? Because now they're giving away their own, sales data, by doing it. But, what we kind of came to the conclusion of it is that not that Amazon doesn't care about that stuff, but whether it's that or now they're, if they're managing, this is not the Buy with Prime, but if they're managing all your shipments from your factory all the ways to to their fulfillment centers or to their warehouses, now they're going to know who your suppliers are and stuff like that. And the bottom line in that, what I'd say kind of harshly, is get over that, because Amazon is smart enough to figure that stuff out without you, kind of thing. And it's the whole, what's the return on it? And your costs are probably going to be much lower. Your operational smoothness of getting things done without any issues are, going to go, you're not going to have those kinds of problems. So basically what I'm saying is, don't really you factor that in, but then get past it very quickly there. So Amazon is smart enough to figure these things out without any one of us, any specific seller.
Plus,
Yeah,
I think it
we've
gives the buyer more confidence too in your
Yes.
e-commerce website. There's a lot of
Exactly.
small mom and pop shops out there that let's be honest, their checkout experience is not very nice. And I think this is a way for them to give a much smoother, more confident experience.
Absolutely, that trust factor. And that's one of the big things that Amazon has done in its how many years of experience, why people buy from them is because they trust them there. And now that you're
Mhm.
going to see that buy with Prime on your own website, your own e-commerce site, there's going to be lift in trust just because of that.
I think that's what it comes down to is if you're a top brand and you've already gotten, like, you have really good operations, customers trust that you're going to get it to the customer fast, and you're a trustworthy brand, you may not see that much of a benefit. But if you're a no-name brand that's trying to really get behind TikTok, or you're trying to get behind Google and other social channels to try and drive customers to your website, oh, that's where the pause comes in. Do I trust these guys? Are they actually legitimate? Are they taking my money and running, or are they someone I can count on? And not only that, are they going to get it to me fast enough? Like, there's one brand, I won't throw them under the bus, but there's one brand that I've ordered from numerous times, and every single time it takes like over a week to get their shipments. I mean, it'll take like 5 days just for them to ship the order. And to me, it's really frustrating. Like, this is 2024 in e-commerce. Like, consumers don't really want to put up with that anymore. And I'd be very hesitant to order from that brand anymore, because I think twice now I ordered something before I went on vacation and I needed it before I left, never got it in time. And if I'm gone for 2 weeks, it's, sat around unused for that period of time. It's a frustrating experience. So, seeing that I've got real time, delivery windows on the website for anything buy with Prime, the consumer knows they can use their cart. Their checkout with, they already have their payment information stored. It definitely, adds credibility and helps brands that are maybe less trusted really benefit.
Yep. Sure. Yep. Yeah. And that's the reward versus what you're probably giving away for it, which is that much.
Right.
Well,
Mhm.
and also, if you are selling on Amazon already, you don't know what percentage of your website customers are just going to Amazon to make that purchase because they feel more confident doing it through that. So
That's right.
it's not necessarily even like it's one of those, I think, mindsets that brands put themselves into of, oh, I'm giving this away by having the buy with Prime on my website, when in reality, there's a chance that you were losing a percentage of those customers to lack of confidence and trust, and then already having some of those other customers just buying from you on Amazon anyway. And so it's not even necessarily a full picture if you're looking at it through that guarded lens.
Yeah. Well, Emily, and you
For
bring
sure.
up a really good important point when you say that, because now, especially if you're using that buy with Prime, you really have to do a good job of, for lack of better words, integrating the Amazon detail page with your page. And I'm not saying copy it or whatever, but do some of the things on your page that Amazon doesn't allow you to do, but are going to help. Make
Exactly.
sure that they're working in conjunction with each other. And then, from the seller standpoint, yes, they prefer if they bought from their e-commerce site. It costs them less money. But if they're getting all the information they need to make a informed buying decision between the Amazon detail page, the trust of Amazon, and all the other stuff you can do on your own e-commerce site, because you don't have any specific rules to go by on that, that's where it becomes, I think, very critical and even more important to you.
Absolutely. And also, so many purchases now are made in very split-second decisions. They are more impulsive. And so
Mhm.
the more resistance that you can eliminate from that to just take somebody from that moment of, oh, I want this, to, oh, I bought this, And that's going to have a much, it's just an essential piece of this whole equation, as we're seeing the way that the social selling aspect of TikTok and Instagram and even YouTube with their partnership with Shopify, there's just the buyer experience is going through a very rapid, significant change right before our eyes, which is why we're also seeing all of these different partnerships. Whereas even the conversation 6 months or a year ago, all of these companies were guarded competitors with each other. And now they're realizing, wait a second, if we're behaving in this way, then we're going to become irrelevant. And so even though it's not our ideal perhaps strategy, let's begin to join forces. And so they're actually demonstrating that similar mentality that brands need to have of, you can't really be looking at things in isolation. You really need to be thinking about what is in your best interest for your growth strategy. And if that means maybe giving away some data or taking a little bit of a hit on some profit percentages for the overall good of making sure that your brand is set up to capture as many customers as possible, then that's just where all of this is heading right now.
Right.
Correct.
I think the important thing, customer buying experience, right? Think like your customer. And I had a client about 2 weeks ago. We were talking about, this topic in some ways, but my client's comment to me was, well, what about all of my loyal customers who buy on my website on a regular basis? Now I'm going to be sending them to Amazon where it's going to cost more and all this. There's ways around that. You can create a VIP section on your website that requires a login, and then you're actually enhancing your customer experience for loyalty more. And then on your regular website, shift that, buy by Amazon, that way. And I know we haven't talked about the DSP advantages yet, which I think are huge. But if you have that loyal customer base, let them know how you feel about them. Give them a little discount and have them have the special login to get special membership pricing, that kind of thing. There's ways around this. You just have to be creative in how you present it to your customer.
Well, I think I want to make sure there's not confusion. There's two different ways that you could sell on your website with Amazon. One would be a link to buy on Amazon, and you could get benefit from, like, let's say the affiliate program brand referral bonus. You send customers to Amazon, they leave your platform, and they get 10% back on that sale off of the referral fees. There's a lot more concern of, like, are they just going to start buying from Amazon and no longer going to my website? I think it's a more valid concern. But when it comes to buy with Prime, they are coming to your website and you're able to offer different products, different pricing. And now those products, you can advertise it is Prime level delivery. So customers can get it fast. They have better transparency on when it's going to arrive. But you actually keep the customer data. They're interacting with your shopping cart, but Amazon's doing the fulfillment. And I think that is really something that Amazon's pushing in a big way. And when you mentioned Emma about what percentage of customers are going to your website and not buying from Amazon, it's a good point, because we have some tricks up our sleeves to be able to leverage data from Amazon and from e-commerce websites to analyze cross-shopping behavior. But how many of those customers went to your website and either just didn't have time, they didn't complete the purchase because of lack of trust, or they went to Amazon and actually chose to buy from a competitor? Well, then it would no longer show up in our data set. So you wouldn't see that the customer originated on your website and then started buying on Amazon, or vice versa. You wouldn't see the customer sale at all. You lost the customer, because if the customer doesn't have enough trust and they say, you know what, let me just see if it's available on Amazon, because Amazon is a platform I trust. They search for your brand. when your competitors advertise against your brand, or they search for a generic product instead because they're not necessarily committed to your brand. And now you lost the customer where you had them originally, but there was some sort of obstacle that kept the consumer from converting. And now you can hopefully overcome that. A couple other things that were announced were a PayPal checkout integration. I don't have much details around that, but what I saw as a main theme is that Amazon's partnering with a lot of different people now. I mean, they partner with Shopify, with PayPal, with Google, with TikTok. They're really trying to play play nice, I guess, with a lot of other large partners where they feel like they're either not as dominant, or the other players are dominant enough that they can't just take over and win that business. It's safer for them to partner, and I think that we'll see more of that coming down the pike, in my opinion. There was also an announcement of a fully managed supply chain, which is going to be rolling out domestically in October, but globally by the end of the year. And it essentially will allow Amazon to kind of own end-to-end your supply chain experience. So, you tell them where your product is, and they'll arrange picking it up and getting it through customs, getting it to their FCs, storing the inventory, and so forth. They are really trying to leverage. They know costs have increased for everybody, and they have this scale that no one else can compete with. So if they can kind of take a bigger piece of ownership and simplify it with one partner, large scale, cost efficient, then it's a win for everybody. Amazon's able to leverage this logistics and operational capability that they build over the years more effectively, and the sellers benefit from it. So I think we're going to see a lot more sellers, really partner with Amazon on that supply chain journey. And one of the other things that was announced was that Amazon, and this is not exactly new, but kind of a new spin on it, is that Amazon will automatically arrange your titles. I saw a slide that specifically said that they will identify patterns and intelligently reorder how keywords are displayed to the customer. So, maybe they resonate that this customer searched for a particular search term, so they actually modify the title to match, so there's better correlation there, and confidence. Hard to say exactly what that will be, since they've already done some AI title components, but maybe you have a sense of what your thoughts are on that, Emma, and then we can shift into some other just kind of content optimization and best practices and so forth.
I don't have super high hopes for this as of now. I've even seen some things on LinkedIn this morning about, like, one of Amazon's AI demonstrations had a typo, another used a trademarked term that the brand couldn't use. So I think there's cause for hesitation just with any other AI. I think if it's just allowed to do its own thing without any kind of human oversight, then you could find yourself in a situation where, even though Amazon is doing this, it's still your brand, so you're still responsible if it's infringing on somebody else's trademark or giving a false impression of what your product is or capable of doing. And so it's a cool concept. I think that we're going to be we're just now on the still very early days of this hyper customization across all e-commerce that we're going to be able to do much easier with AI. But I still do not personally hold a lot of confidence in its ability to do it well.
Yeah, I'm in your camp on that, Emma, for the reasons. And yeah, we're still in our infancy with AI. The hope would be that if Amazon rolled it out, and what's typical for them, as I'm sure we all know, is that they roll things out and then they figure out the issues with it, and then they start to make the adjustments. But what my hope would be is that instead of it just automatically happening, there's a thing, where they, when you're in Seller Central and when they have suggestions, they said, hey, we've noticed that we think that this title might work better for you. Do you want to use it? Click yes or no, kind of thing. That's not Amazonian. That's not the way Amazon would typically do things. They would just do it, but maybe it'll evolve to that kind of thing for the exact reasons, because we also know how Amazon is. Even if they make the change and there's a trademark infringement or whatever, they're going to hold you responsible for, well, you could have gone in there and changed it back yourself, kind of thing.
Right.
But they will still hold you responsible for it.
Right.
So my thought on this is, it reminds me of Tesla, when Tesla first started using full self-driving in their vehicles. If you were an early adopter, you knew that there was going to be a lot of pain points, and you were perfectly fine that, hey, it's going to drive half of the time without my involvement. Well, it's gotten better where it's safer than humans now, and it's getting more and more sophisticated over time. But it took a long time to get there. It takes a lot of data, a lot of trial and error, a lot of testing. And I think that Amazon's going to almost do it like just like an A/B test, essentially, with their algorithms, their AI tools, kind of trying it out. Like if I change this title slightly to match their keyword, does it present better click-through results? And then was it still highly relevant and produce better purchase results? I've got higher conversion rates, and learn from that, and hopefully say we've already identified, based on data, these actually perform better, and we're going to continue to use it. And I think it's going to be without human intervention, unfortunately. And I think early on, we're going to see a lot of problems. Like the one example I saw was Ray-Ban aviators was an example that they used. Well, aviators is a trademark term. And, Amazon, to me, if they made the change, if I was the FTC, I would be going after Amazon, saying, you have this tool that automatically changes the seller put in this title, you changed the title, you're the one liable, Amazon, not the seller. So I think the legal implications are going to be more on Amazon than on the seller, unless there's suggestions that are deployed, similar to what you said, Robert, where there is human intervention. Then I think that the humans that are looking it over need to be lacking trust, essentially. It's just like today. If you use any AI tools to optimize your content, you're going to count on 80% of it being pretty good, 20% probably very flawed. And you have to plan to react accordingly and adapt it. And I think the risk is if you trust it too much too early. Over time, yeah, it's going to get better and better. But for now, I hope Amazon rolls it out slow enough that they catch the mistakes early, and it refines the algorithmic decision making to where it's not embarrassing, it's not misleading, it's not inaccurate. But some of that's really going to be just the nature of the beast when you're trying new things.
How does this also get deployed democratically? Like, that's another thing that pops into my mind, because it's different than like Shopify, for example, is offering a lot of this targeted segmentation AI, but it's within your own brand. So this is honestly just like a curiosity question that I'm asking, and I don't know if anybody has the answer to that, but if Amazon is tweaking everybody's titles, what is the process that makes it so that some brands aren't getting more preferential tweaks? Or is it now that all the products that are essentially like exactly the same are all going to have the exact same title? I'm curious what that looks like in terms of creating fair opportunities for all sellers.
I think what the hope is that when they make a change, let's say they they move your fourth word to the first word, kind of thing, that they're doing it based on data kinds of things. Like, okay, when people are searching, they're searching for it most often this way, and this is the top word. You have your fourth word, you should have it as your first word, kind of thing. But that's me saying this with my fingers crossed, saying the hope is there, but we don't know. Amazon does things that just for us professionals just blows us away. So why would you do it like that, kind of thing? So I don't think we know the answer to that. I think will have our opinions, just like I just gave mine. There is the what is the Shopify commercial now that says ask 9 different people and you get 10 different answers. You got to it.
Well, and I think I've seen where they've moved a word in the title, and then it's caused another algorithm to then move that product's category. And then
there you go.
We had a client where their variation had 14 items, 14 children in the variation. 4 of them got moved in category, and then the whole variation got flagged as a policy violation because you had 2 different categories in one variation. And when I talked to Amazon, I'm like, okay, move it back. Well, no, you need to move it back. And so we, which is easier said than done, but the whole policy violation was caused by Amazon, and now they're threatening to, suspend an account because you're, violating, variation policy. And Ben,
Totally Amazon.
and I saw that, right? And Ben, you and I saw that in the GPS category, where all of a sudden some non-GPS tracking, devices that use Bluetooth were moved into a GPS category for a week or so. But I think it's going to have more far-reaching, issues. But like Steve said, though, Amazon's got. But I wish Amazon would work out the kinks on the Amazon Basic products, maybe.
That's a good idea.
That's a good suggestion, Wes.
Yeah.
They've got a broad range of items. Just do the Amazon Basic. Work with your own stuff.
Yeah. And they should force them to do it the way sellers do and call into seller support to get it fixed, unidentified, so they realize what they have to go through.
Yeah, then put that on LinkedIn too, right? That'd be great.
Exactly.
They did do that with Vendor Central, with titles, automated titles. Early, a couple of years ago, they started where they built the title for vendors automatically based on brand and category and color and size and everything else. It was all basically just a compilation of attributes, but they started it with their own brand, their own purchase products, so they had full control. It's a really good suggestion. I think that they have enough brands and enough product categories that they should be able to learn really well how this is going to work, perfect it without impacting all of the sellers more broadly. I think that's wishful thinking, but I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
So, I guess one of the things that come up when we talk about, content optimizations is, okay, when should we use AI? What are some best practices? What are ways that we capture the right keywords and so forth? So I'd love to open it up for discussion on just general suggestions, kind of challenges, whatever might be helpful to the audience. And Emma, maybe you can chime in here first.
Are you asking in general with content creation or more specifically with keyword research? I just want to make sure I direct
I think content creation in general. And then, I'd like to maybe talk about, some best practices around how do we find the right keywords, and then also how do we make sure we don't, get our hands slapped by Amazon by doing the wrong things too.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So many different things that you have to juggle when you're creating content for Amazon. It's so much easier. It's still challenging and complicated on your own website, but it feels like I sometimes sort of imagine those like heist movies where there are all the laser beams that you need to wiggle around and through so as not to trigger the alarm system. Obviously, we're not trying to do anything illegal in this case, but that is what it feels like when you're trying to balance
True.
keywords,
Mm.
high converting content, and following Amazon's rules. It's a tall order. So the way that we use AI, what we've found most effective is really in the brainstorming, ideation, research stage of things. We have yet to see it really do anything phenomenal for content creation as something that we want to use. We'll still get suggestions for ideas about bullets and whatnot, but I continue to feel like there's a big gap between what ChatGPT or Claude or any of these other tools are able to generate versus where our expectations are in terms of what's going to be a really tight, concise, pointed, sales driving piece of content. And so we're using AI for things like reviewing the reviews to identify patterns and common both positive and negative feedback from customers, identifying also language that's used so that we can write things in a way that is going to be more natural to how the customer is thinking and speaking about these products. And just making sure that we're covering all of our bases in the points that are most important to call out. So that's how we are using AI, is really more for that research and outlining and ideation stage of things. But that is the challenge that I think is always important to be aware of when you're doing creative work is that once you have concepts down, it can sometimes make it more difficult to get creative and think beyond those. So before diving into the AI, it's always good to do some initial brainstorming first so that you're not allowing the AI to just simply drive your decision making or have you be too narrow in your focus about what it is that that could be opportunities to be positioning your product. The thing is that AI is leveling the playing field on a content perspective. It just a couple of years ago, if you had a listing on Amazon that had proper grammar and was written in good English, you were already in probably the top 5% of sellers. And so you have obviously those types of details are going to help communicate trust to the consumer. And so that was an advantage in and of itself. That advantage is really not there. And of course, you can still find plenty of examples of poorly written pieces of content out there, but they're not as common as they used to be. And so what do you do as a brand to be able to stand out and grab customers when the competition has tightened up and when there are fewer obvious points of differentiation? And so that's where actually the creative becomes increasingly important, is how can you tell a story? How can you connect with a specific customer base? How can you highlight what makes you unique as a brand? And those are the aspects that AI right now anyway is not as skilled at being able to do effectively.
Yeah. I think that your point of like using it for inspiration is a really good one. Like what I like to do when I'm trying to wrap my head around ideas is I generally will try more than one tool. So I'll use like ChatGPT and Claude, for example, and I give them very specific parameters. I want this many characters and this number of bullet points with these key features per bullet point with these keywords and this tone of voice, and like give them every single bit of details on what is going to conform, because they could write the best title that's 5,000 characters and that's not going to help you, right? So you've got to, tell them specifically what you're looking for, and then run it a few times and say, give me another iteration, give me another iteration. And then I like to pick and choose different, it might just be a couple sentences that I get out of it, but I can usually find some real good nuggets doing it that way. And, but to your point, it's, and to I think Robert's point, AI really is just not at the point where you can just set it and forget it or let it do its thing. You've got to have the human intervention, and it can actually be a little overwhelming when you get so many suggestions and so many ideas and so forth. Is how do I piece this all together and make sense of it and make sure I incorporated the right keywords, because I'm taking all of these different pieces and compiling it into one piece of content. So it's more difficult than you think when you start doing it really, really well, even though you're using AI. And it's both art and science.
Yeah.
If you ask me.
Right. And then when you get into the keywords, you have the concern of making sure that you're not using competitors' brand names. And if you're not, or other terms that you're not supposed to use, which could look like really good keyword opportunities on the surface. But part of the reason that they look so good is because you're not able to actually utilize them in your content. And a lot of times those competitor names will look just like a term that somebody would use. And so if you're not really aware of and familiar with your category, then this is a very easy way for AI to potentially make some suggestions that could be risky for your account health. So for whatever reason, what comes to mind is there's a magnesium supplement called Natural Calm. And so that's a phrase that I think I would perhaps choose to use if I was wanting to write about how magnesium is helpful for stress and getting into that peaceful state of mind for a good night's sleep. Like Natural Calm, I think would be something that I would say, but I shouldn't say it because that's infringing upon their trademark if I'm using it in my keywords or in my content in any way. So you need to be really aware of things on a category level and then also on a broader Amazon level to make sure that you're not using promotional language. You're not talking about guarantees or pricing or any of these elements that would be okay elsewhere, but that Amazon is very explicitly not okay with.
Yep. Yeah, the big thing, and we're kind of all saying this, is just remember, everything is a tool, and you've got to use your brain. And your brain is one of those tools. One of the things, and especially prior to AI's changed this a little bit, but what I tell my clients is when you are doing your bullet points, what I want you to do is don't do the keyword research. I want you to create the bullet points first with your marketing hat on, like you're trying to sell it. What are you going to tell? If you could have a conversation with a customer, what are the 5 sentences that you are going to tell the customer? Because that's what's going to get your product, right? What's that? Yeah. And so you're getting that point across. Now, what I want you to do is go do the keyword research and figure out what are the words that are important for discovery because customers are searching that or your competitors are using it or whatever. And what can you substitute in? What did you create the first time you did it with your sales, marketing hat on? And now what can you pull out of there and put a keyword in? But now to Steve, to your point, when you're using ChatGPT or whatever AI tool where you can tell it what keywords to use, and Emma, to your point, you got to make sure you're not using that naturally calm or a promotional term or whatever it is, and that's where you're using your brain at that point, as the tool.
It's just as important to say what not to do in the
exactly.
prompts when you're working with AI as what to do. But it's hard to remember what all not to tell it not to do. Like, don't use these competitor brands, or these terms. So that's where you always forget something. There's always going to be some sort of inaccuracy or some sort of mishap or something that, if you're not reviewing it in depth, you're going to have problems. And that natural calm example is a good one, because if it incorporated it, you publish it live, Amazon's going to look at that as your content you uploaded, you're responsible for it, you violated their terms of service. And you don't mess with Amazon terms of service. So everybody, so speaking of that, I know there's a lot of other do's and don'ts. What are some of the big ones?
All caps headers and the bullets were pretty common practice for many years. Amazon came out a few years ago explicitly saying don't do it. Many sellers continue to do it. And now more recently, they've said, okay, we really don't want you doing this. And now if you don't change it, then AI might go in and change it for you. And so that applies to the all caps headers, that applies to guarantees or warranties or any mention of those types of offers. That applies to use of emojis or special characters in your bullets and in your product description. I've also seen that they're going to be enforcing this with if you're using more than one comparison chart in your A+ or premium A+ content, which there's a use case for why you would want to have multiples there. So you're going to need to be strategic about that, because Amazon is also saying if you don't cut down to one, then we will choose which one or ones to eliminate. And I would never want to hand that decision over to Amazon. I would want to be making that decision for myself based on what I think is most valuable for the purpose of that particular product page. I believe those are the top ones that come to mind.
Those are all good ones, and some of them I don't necessarily understand. Like the comparison charts, I can see there's people that probably just abuse it. They want to get a whole bunch of links to their products. I get it, but there are some products where it really makes sense to have two comparison charts. And I wish there was more of a kind of an exception review process or something. I mean, you're already submitting it for approval. Let them decide with some human oversight what makes sense and what doesn't. Same thing with the all caps. Like, to me, the only reason people use all caps is to try and make key points stand out. So back years ago, when you could use HTML, people used HTML, and then you can't do that, so you have to use all caps. And we've even contacted Amazon when they first announced that rule of no caps, and said, hey, what about just all caps on certain words to call attention? And we had numerous reps tell us, oh, that's okay, our intent is that we don't want the whole paragraph in all caps. It's poor readability. But the reality is they had a language that was spelled explicitly, no all caps. And now they're enforcing it, but I don't think they've solved for how do I make key points stand out? Like Robert was saying, the way we like to look at content is, think about it like a consumer has 10 seconds to look at your product or less, and they're glancing only. Are they going to get the key points, the key selling features? And we actually tell people, like, you need to get this executed just on images. So they flick through the images like 5 times. They should see every single point of your product, why they should buy it. And if they go to the bullet points, they should see every single benefit of your product, the benefit, not the feature. And then the rest of the bullet point kind of explains what the feature is that provides that benefit. So if it says, I don't want them to say 20,000 milliamps in the bullet point and then say that it charges your iPhone 15 6 times. I'd rather say charges your iPhone 15 6 times with our 20,000 milliamp high capacity battery, because the specs lose people. They don't quite get it. It's not instant get, and we're about instant get. So I want to call out those key features, and the lack of all caps and the lack of bolding and so forth, I think is a miss on Amazon's side. The emojis I've always felt are gimmicky, and in fact, I think that in a lot of ways, people that were using them actually caused distraction away from their key messaging. I've only seen a couple implementations where the emojis that they chose actually were really well suited so that your mind got what that key bullet point was just based on the emoji itself. It kind of reiterated what the product was. But most of the time, I think it's just a poor implementation anyway. So I'm really kind of glad that Amazon's getting rid of the emojis, to be honest. But
Yeah, I mean, I think if they were optimizing for conversion, the Amazon product page would benefit from a makeover very
yeah,
considerably.
yeah.
But I will say that at least what we've found to be an antidote to the concern that you have about the making those key points stand out is, first of all, just being very concise, really thinking about what the purpose of a bullet point is. Like, most best practices for other websites is to have a short paragraph talking about the benefits of the product, and then having really short bullets that are just calling out the main features. And we're forced to combine both on Amazon because of the nature of how the product page is designed. And so I think
Mhm.
that's where that pull and that complication comes in. And so being very concise, also talking about, Robert, your suggestion of how to write bullet points in really thinking about the marketing purpose first rather than the keyword purpose first is another way of helping to combat this and making sure that it's very streamlined. It also is just the way that product discovery is evolving over time as AI becomes more integrated into product discovery, and having the AI be able to understand the product on more than just whether or not a specific phrase is included in a particular part of your listing. So that's, I believe, where things are headed on that side of things. But then also what we do, it's not as eye-catching as the all caps bullets, but having title case headers of where the first letter of each word of that little beginning part of the bullet is capitalized, and then offsetting it with a dash. It doesn't have quite the visual impact, but it still helps to give some clarity at a quick glance about what the topic of that bullet point is, for that skimmability and for that
Yeah.
easy comprehension that customers are looking for when they just first and foremost want to be able to check that box of, yes, this item is what I'm looking for.
Yeah, that's it's a good compromise, and we've seen the same thing. I wish it was different. Like you said, if they were optimizing for conversion rates, they need to do a complete overhaul, and I completely agree. Especially when it's variated by category. Sometimes the bullet points are truncated, sometimes they're not. Sometimes the placement's different. I mean, it's all over the place, and it's one of the reasons why I don't like when any sellers like read something on a blog or hear something on a webinar and say, oh, I'm going to do it exactly like that, because your product category, your product, your brand, it all has deviations that you need to consider. Your customer shopping behavior might be very different. How Amazon's displaying your product page might be very different. And if they're truncated your bullet points, you might need to make even more succinct bullet points so they don't truncate key messages, and so forth. So speaking of keywords that we're trying to incorporate, what are some of the things that you like to do as far as gathering the right keywords, tools, or best practices related to that?
We primarily use Data Dive and Helium 10 as our two main keyword research tools. I feel like they complement each other
Yeah,
well. I
we do
like
too.
I like Data Dive because it just speeds up things that we were doing manually before, and it makes it very easy to get a sense of what keywords have been incorporated as you're working on the creation of the different parts of a listing. But what is a real shortcoming with Data Dive is that it doesn't really give you sometimes that specificity that is really important to making sure that you're covering all of your bases in regards to keywords. So for example, if you're selling a supplement that is a blend of different ingredients, and maybe your combination is different than all of your other competitors, or a skincare item, or even something that's more basic, or a bundle. There's all these different situations where, because of the way that Data Dive gathers information, and then the fact that you can't add in or do additional supplementary searches to pull it all in, we go to Helium 10 to be able to have a more comprehensive view of those product specific keywords that are also very important, and that we're also just not leaving anything on the table that for one reason or another Data Dive didn't pull in. Helium 10 is also great for historical data. So especially when we're looking at the holidays and wanting to be thinking about what keywords may be worthwhile to be shifting into your content strategy as you gear up for the gifting season, it's worthwhile to look at some historical data. Obviously, it's not guaranteed that that's exactly what it's going to be like this year, but if you're only basing it on the data that's right now, you could have big blind spots. That's any item that has a seasonality component to it. Like, let's say that you're selling candles, but because of our proximity right now to Halloween, you get a lot of Halloween specific keywords. That doesn't mean that those are your biggest opportunity all year round. It's just that we're in spooky season, and so that's going to be influencing the kinds of searches and the volume that people are the volume of those searches that's isolated to this time of year. So really making sure whatever tools you're using, that you have that in mind, and that trends and time of year and what's happening in current events and all of those different elements can have a very strong impact on the keywords that you identify on any given day. And so this really shouldn't be an isolated activity that you do once. This is something that requires a constant research and refinement, and making sure that you're having your finger on the pulse of what people are searching today, so that hopefully you're in the right place also tomorrow.
And you bring up a good point with the gifting and other seasonal aspects. I mean, we've got big deal days coming up, October 8th and 9th. We've got holiday right around the corner. Are there, and you mentioned Helium 10, which is a great tool because you can look at the historical data for, you basically pick any month throughout the last couple of years and see what were the trends. So last Halloween, last Christmas, last Prime Day, whatever. Do you see any specific implementations related to the Prime days, or only like giftable purchase behavior and things like that would be more, or seasonally relevant things like Father's Day or Halloween, or maybe breast cancer awareness or something like that?
Not sure that I follow your question. Are you asking if there might be Prime Day or Prime Day adjacent kind of terms that would
That's
be?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that we see that there are certain categories that tend to be more shopped on these big shopping day deals, and that also when people are in that shopping mindset, that they're just going to be buying more of everything. There's kind of that spillover of like, oh yeah, well, I'm keeping my eye out because I really need a new vacuum. But then you also realize like, oh, and some of these other things, and I saw a great deal. And so there is absolutely opportunity around that. Obviously, you can't be writing Prime Day and things like that in your listing.
Do you see many like terms that incorporate gift, or I mean, like deals, or best, or things that like that are, if you're shopping on Prime Day and you're looking for a big screen TV, do you see deal oriented terms, or maybe more Google like search behavior on those days?
You have to just be careful with terms like that. The best, for example, is a term that Amazon doesn't want you using in your listings. Deals, they also don't want you using. So just like some of the conversation that we were having earlier, you might see some of that data because there are certainly people that are searching those things, but just because they're searching them doesn't mean that you can actually integrate them into what you're actually putting into your content on your listing.
Yeah, so that brings up a good point that I want everyone to understand is when you're doing keyword research, you're going to find other brands, terms that are against terms of service on Amazon and so forth, but all of those can generally be put in ads. Ads gives you pretty much free reign to advertise all of the terms that we used as an example, and drive traffic that way. And if you drive traffic to your listing using terms that are maybe competitive brands or words that Amazon doesn't want you to use, like best, and so forth, then Amazon will start giving you organic placement because you've proven that those items convert highly, or your product converts highly when people search for those terms. So it's kind of a workaround essentially to do that. And a lot of times people do this in isolation. They look at advertising performance based on, automatic campaigns and what their current ad performance looks like, what terms work, what don't. Cerebro, which is what terms are driving their to their competitors and so forth, but they're not necessarily doing their own keyword research and then separating those two things and say these can go in the listing and these can go in ads. So I'd like to remind everybody those should be incorporated where it makes sense. Sometimes it doesn't make sense, and sometimes you don't want to go too broad. Like you don't want to be shown to every customer that shops for everything. That would actually hurt your conversion rate and actually build up what we call a negative metric for you. We want highly converting, highly relevant terms.
Also, too, I'm going to add, Emma, really quick, and I want your opinion on it too. I've had a couple of clients tell me, hey, we want to pull some of our Walmart advertising conversion data and use it on Amazon, and I would caution sellers because of that, because Walmart's a very different marketplace. There's a lot of keywords based around, like you hear about deals and best, but also on Walmart I see a lot of clearance and low cost and this kind of stuff, and I don't want to bring that kind of a shopper into the Amazon side because we may not be the clearance product on Amazon. But what are your thoughts about that as well?
Well, also the Walmart search algorithm works differently. Yeah, I was just at their the Walmart marketplace sellers summit in San Francisco a few weeks ago, and I had a conversation with the person who is actually developing out their search algorithm capabilities, and it is still far less sophisticated than what we're used to with Google or Amazon. And so I don't think that it's what you bring up, Wes, about different customers and shopping behaviors. That's one part of it, but then there's just the whole other part of it, and that it's just not even I don't think that there is an equivalency that's close enough to necessarily give you valuable insights. So like with anything, it could be helpful to do further research. So if you see that there are these terms that you're performing really well with on Walmart or Google or what have you, then why don't you do that research to see if those could also be good opportunities for you on Amazon or not? So I would use those more as points for further exploration, similar with how we're talking about working with AI. So using it as a jumping off point, as a source of curiosity, but then doing deeper investigation to validate whether that's actually a direction that you want to go in or not.
Sure.
Yeah, we found Walmart is very different in all aspects. So anybody that basically takes their catalog and lifts and shifts it onto Walmart, you really need to truncate your titles a lot. You need to make sure the bullets are very succinct and the description's more broad, and and really look at the listing quality scores and adapt the content to their algorithm specifically, which is sometimes surprising what they want. Sometimes they want less, not more. And sometimes they, it's all about just, does it have all the right attributes? Does it have the colors and sizes more prominent? There's a lot of kind of nuances to it. And if you are selling on Walmart, I'd encourage you to actually invest time to get the most of it, because we hear a lot of people saying, we don't spend any time on Walmart. It's a waste of our time or something like that. I mean, we have clients that sell millions of dollars a year on Walmart, and it does require its own unique attention, its own unique advertising strategies, its own unique keywords and terms and search queries and so forth that you're targeting. And if you're not willing to invest in those types of things, you probably migrated onto Walmart too fast, because just being there is not enough if you want to succeed. Well, I know we are a little bit over time. So Emma, thank you for joining us. For those that joined later, Emma is offering a free listing audit. And what's the website they can go to, Emma?
They can go to marketingbyemma.com/free analysis, or if you just go to marketingbyemma.com, you'll find a link to the form for that, as well as all of our contact details if you'd like our help with getting your listing creative geared up for not just Q4, but don't forget to also be planning for next year, for 2025. Don't get too short-sighted.
That's a very good point. Very good point. So yes, thank you everybody for joining us. I know many of you are joining us on live streams. Next time, sign up for the webinar so you can join and ask questions, and look forward to seeing you next month. We'll be putting my contact information up on the screen here momentarily. If you have any questions, any follow-ups, if you'd like us to have a conversation with you and talk shop and help strategize how you can get more out of all the marketplaces, Amazon, Walmart, Target, eBay, international expansion, and so forth, I'd be happy to have a conversation with you. So thanks again, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks everybody.
Bye-bye.